Welcome to Earth, a Love Story. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter. This time on the podcast, we welcome back my dear heart and soul brother, David Coleman, to talk about what else? Death, time, and the apocalypse. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping. First, on September 7th, I am hosting Dr. Carrie Murphy for a workshop called The Elements, 5 Phases of Being. Join us to decondition from the overculture and find new ways to live into the most healed and authentic version of yourself. Arrive with a problem, issue, or block that you've been wrestling with, and join us as Carrie guides us into a new relationship with our phases of being. This is a suggested $35 donation-based offering, and you can check the show notes to sign up today. The recording will be available for those who can't make it live. Also, I was recently on a podcast called Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs with hosts Jordan and Tom. I loved this podcast experience with them, so I am linking that in the show notes as well. Please check it out and give them some love. On today's episode, as I mentioned, David and I talk apocalypse. The episode was recorded a few weeks ago, and you will hear me wrestling. I moved through confusion, overwhelm, hope, fear, rinse, and repeat, and that's what's been going on internally as well. I've struggled for a while with how I want to publicly engage with the rumblings in the world, and I've had 2 panic attacks in the last couple of months as I've approached some internal threshold, my own personal apocalypse, in relation to what I both can't bear to say and can't bear not to say. My voice literally stuck in my throat, constricting and constricted. Panic rising as I can't speak and must. My cut-off voice, though, is becoming liberated. And with that liberation is the realization that it's not about me at all. The wheel is creaking and groaning, a turn coming soon, the wheel heavy with potential energy ready to move. Can you hear in the background a beating of drums, a resonance building in us, and something that's trying to break through, break like a wave, a wheel, a wave, a banging of drums, a storm is coming. It's looking for bodies and voices to rumble and shake through, and mine is one of many. I've consented. I've gathered my strength and wisdom and clarity, past and future, left and right, above and below, and now it's time to go. The apocalypse is a portal, a doorway, a gateway, a bridge, and it's personal and collective, and it's here. It's always been here. She has always been here, apocalyptic mother, just louder now. We can feel it in the air. From the Greek apocalypsis, meaning revelation, unveiling, disclosure, the act of making something known, to uncover, to lay bare. Armageddon is the end of the world. Apocalypse is revolution, like evolution, like the turning of a great wheel. Things revealed we cannot bear to see and cannot bear not to see. A reckoning through a portal of fire to find out if we can become who we have the potential to be. And I long for clarity and certainty. I desperately wish I could see the future, except when I can, then I desperately wish I wouldn't. I've been having precognitive dreams. Earthquakes, nuclear rumblings, objects hurtling through the sky, dreams that have come true, and there's nothing to do, no one to save or rescue, just information passing through the space of my body and spirit and mind, and I'm left with electric, jangled nerves and the sense of a convergence of timelines. I long for certainty, but she ain't here. And the stability will now come from finding footing in the liminal. Certainty doesn't exist anyway, and even the illusion that it ever did is falling away. Those days are long gone, and the ground is now found being rooted in self, the moment, the earth in the forest of communion in containers and containers and containers big enough for you and me, integration of and resilience in the paradox. We are story beings, and we can story tell ourselves into being personally and collectively, and let's keep the frameworks and stories and containers in service to our humanity. The apocalypse is a story. The descent of Inanna is a story. Moving from evolution through suffering to evolution through joy and creativity is a story. They are guides and gateways and portals and bridges, but let's not forget it is we that are the story beings. And I will say this, I do have to say this, that if this doesn't resonate, I'm not the droid you're looking for. None of this is prescriptive or capital T true. It's not meant to apply to you or your own sacred interior landscape. It's not meant to override your own guidance. There are at least 8 billion different realities, and that's as it should be. Some will experience the years to come as those slipping through raindrops. There will be loss and fear and pain, magic, mystical moments full of grace, and always relationship to the mystery. And really, how is that different than what reality is already? My greatest wish is that we all tune our ears to our own great below, our interior worlds that contain our own deep knowing in our own deep bones, and our own pathways to commune with the safe and close dead, with the service to others, with the goddess, with our own deep and high selves, with our allies and guides and guardians. So as you hear the conversation with David and I today, and as I continue to liberate my voice and say what I need to say, as the four who are one directed me to do all those years ago, I invite you to look within and stay rooted in your own truth. And one final thing before you hear David's voice like a beacon in the storm, it's become clear to me that grief remains my divine teacher, companion, and guide. It's not that I'm hanging out in the underworld, the underside, just that I'm not afraid to die and not die. I will go down to her lap again and again, and joy and creativity will and do come, and grief remains the impossibly, infinitely collapsing moment at the center of all things. Grief to ecstasy, she teaches me how to live and draws me back again and again. My body is a tuning fork for the unsaid, unloved things. My body feels the uncried cries and refuses to leave them behind. The portals of grief and apocalypse are what give meaning to loss. It's as Francis Weller says, we may not make it. That's a real possibility. But if we do, I think it will be because of the broken heart. I think grief might save us by reminding us of our deep affection for the world, our deep love for the world, our inseparability. I myself am an eternal optimist. I desperately love humanity as a species. I love our precious planet, and I love this journey. Now, please enjoy my conversation with my dear friend, David Coleman. I've been trying to think of what order to talk about things in for people, and what feels really up for me right now is how to navigate what I call the apocalypse, which is the kind of unveiling, revealing, crumbling, coming apart, systems changing into something else, that it's a doorway, it's not an ending, is how to navigate that without turning away from it, with turning towards it. Is it okay to be okay through this? And also not shy away from the grief and the challenges and the difficulty of what's coming. It's holding both at the same time. And that is such a paradox because it's such an easy place. You know, you can either bypass the grief or bypass the difficulty of what's coming and just put on rose-colored glasses, or not deal with it at all. It can be completely catastrophic and be overwhelming because it seems like the end. And somewhere in the center of that, there's like this thread of truth and another way of being with what's happening. And that's what feels really alive, in addition to many people reporting dreams of the apocalypse or apocalyptic visions, and like what to do with that, how to hold them. I've been really deep in this like timeline wormhole about experiencing potential timelines, moving back and forth between them, and trying to navigate that and not feel like a crazy person, truly, like not feel like I'm losing my mind because I'm trying to make all of that fit into consensus reality. So that's a mouthful, but I always know you can pick it up and fine.
Starting with like the first thing, let's just start there, all right? And maybe you'll have to remind me of the other things, right? Because there's so many big things in there. But the first thing that came to my mind is how this is really no different to the I'm talking about the collective journey that we're on, that we could call an apocalyptic one at this point. I don't think anyone would really disagree with that at this time. It's looking very apocalyptic anyway. Let's at least admit that that we are at this point in the world where something like it's a big ending of endings kind of thing, and it's also a beginning of beginnings kind of thing, and they're happening at the same time. It's like a big turning point feeling in human history, certainly. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, that we're at the apex of something, right? And it feels that way. And I would say that there's no difference between coming to that point collectively and coming to that point as an individual, which we will all do at some point in our lives with some aspect of our journey, simply because we're all going to die. That is a known fact that all human beings inherit from birth, and we're all having to find our own way to be safe with that, to be okay with that, to be to carry on with life in spite of that looming apocalypse, that looming Armageddon that comes at the end of our individual lives. So it's very resonant with that, right? The degree to which an individual is okay with their dying, their eventual dying, is very much to do with their capacity to handle all of this apocalyptic stuff in the world as well. All right, there's a relationship between them. But also, I'd say those people that have gone through transformations, like profound transformations in life, and that includes almost everybody who's been traumatized, but also everybody who's been involved in some kind of spiritual path of awakening and growing. All of those people have had transformations that are very, very much like death and rebirth type experiences of the ego, of the self. It gets reinvented continuously on many paths and for many people, and it's like a never-ending voyage of discovery. But there are often initial experiences that people have on that journey where they feel absolutely terrified of what's going on because they can make no sense of it, or they feel terrified of it in some other way, intimidated by the profundity of it, or by the lack of consensus belief in it, or they're alienated in some way by their experience, or they've had like spiritual like breakthroughs in their own early meditations that they find difficult to put into words at that point, that they can't share with others, that they keep from their families, all these kinds of things, right? And all of those people that have gone through those kinds of transformations know that the apocalypse deep down is nothing to be scared of because it's essentially a dismantling of systems, structures, and things that we would defend, but which are not really all that good for us. Often we would defend them in spite of the fact of knowing that they're not good for us. There are many habits that we have as human beings all kinds of habits that we have as human beings that we know are bad for us that we keep doing. It's no different to what we go through as individuals on our journey of self-discovery. It was very often traumatic issues that we have to deal with in order to be who we are, to become whole, to be healed or to awaken. Those journeys teach everybody that goes on them that the apocalypse that's happening in this world that's going on right now is not something to be ultimately terrified of. That there is meaning to everything that happens, that everything that happens happens at the right time and in the right way with good reason and all of that. They know all of that from their various paths, all the journeys, all of the experiences that they've had all go in that direction ultimately. So they don't feel so threatened by it, right? And then you've got everybody else who's terribly threatened by it and does not have the capacity that those other people have to deal with it because they haven't had the experience that teaches them either that death is not the end or that there is a spiritual meaning to life, guiding, loving, actually intelligence that's providing you with everything you need at the right time in order to grow and to evolve, right? So you've got, on the one hand, millions now, probably billions, I cross my fingers at that, of people who are in this camp, let's say, and then you've got everybody else which is still many, many more people, I would say, than are in that camp. And those people have a limited capacity, this second group of people have a very limited capacity to deal with what's going on. They
Mhm.
will freak out from time to time. That's just part of nature. They have a capacity to deal with what's going on, and it's being outstripped on a daily basis, actually now. Every day, the news is something that causes them to go further and further into like survival mode, I would say, in preparation for big changes and very frightening things that are occurring in the world, right? Point anywhere essentially in the world right now, and it's scary. There's terror and reasons to be afraid everywhere. But this is an evolving capacity. It's not a static capacity that they have. It's an evolving capacity both as individuals and as a collective body of people. It's an evolving capacity because the people on the other camp are carrying for them a lot of that energy and transmuting it. And as they're transmuting it, they're becoming stronger, more strongly rooted in that and more committed to their paths. More wonderful things are happening to them as a result of that as well, by the way. They're having all kinds of experiences that they weren't having before as a result of this ramping up of this light, of awareness. And that's also magnetically pulling more and more people into the vortex of awakening, where they go through these over this horizon that leads from that camp into this camp. And as this process goes on, it just accelerates. It just accelerates and accelerates and accelerates. And we're in this giddy, almost sickening period right now where like the acceleration is ramping up and in response the paradigm of fear and darkness that we built collectively as a human race over many many centuries is being broken away, is being broken down, and we're having to face all of the apocalyptic scenarios that we imagined in that darkness, in that land of ignorance, right? They're having to come out one by one. They're marching out one by one onto the stage to be looked at and dismissed by the collective, like grown beyond in some way by the collective, which means that it's a time where demons are running rampant. There's like all over the world, there's the demon of like nuclear threats from Russia and from China and from like all this it's just crazy, crazy demonic exorcism going on is what I would call it. But it's all part of this process of people becoming awakened and also becoming okay with the uh, the darkness that we've created. It's got to be looked at, right? We've got to see it. We've got to see the darkness. It has to be, it can't be denied or ignored, okay? And so people who are capable of doing that and seeing the darkness, what it is, seeing the truth, having the diamond light, the clarity of spiritual enlightenment to see through the darkness and beyond it into matters of truth and meaning in all the darkness, those people are kind of like carrying a lot of this process at this time. It's important for them to like purge their bodies, get this process cleaned up from time to time, have maintenance done on themselves, like continuously recharge. All of this is being done all the time now with this group of people, right? But eventually it will mean that they will face the dramas of the apocalypse, okay? And just like in an individual, when you face the dramas that you have concocted with your ego, whether those dramas are addictions or victimized behaviors or unprocessed traumas, just like when you come to those moments on an individual level and there is a dismantling that needs to be gone through of what you have built with, let's call it your ego, your lower self or whatever, your imagined self, the narrative, the story that you've created of your life, when you've got to reframe that and therefore reframe who you are as a result, in order to draw the real meaning that you need to draw from it, that you need to do in these situations. It's a death. There's a loss, but it's not without meaning. There's death and there's loss with meaning. There's death and there's loss with transformation into something that is better ultimately. And that's the apocalypse
Mm.
on a collective level. It's the dismantling of those systems. Call them the collective ego has created these systems, wherever those systems are that the collective ego has created. And I'm not going to tell you what they are because I don't actually know what they are, but I think we all have our suspicions what those kinds of systems are right now. They're all looking very corrupt. They're all looking super corrupt right now. So you don't have to look very far to see what those might be. Those things die, and we have to deal with that death as a part of the dismantling of our collective ego, as this whole, in the background, this whole process of people waking up is going on that's fueling it, all right? Um, so that's how I look at this and how we can, how we help others, right, who are perhaps don't have the capacity that we have to have more capacity for this and to see the meaning in all of it and to be okay with it is basically we ramp up our own path, we ramp up our own work, we take care of ourselves, we focus on creating as many strong communities that share this, and they can come from, like I said, all kinds of paths. All paths lead to the same realization that meaning comes from suffering and pain as well as it does from joy and happiness. In fact, more meaning comes from that, and it's all part of the same thing, right? It's all part of the same journey that all these paths take. They all have to do with that, the question of suffering and how it's related to transformation. So we just focus on that and staying there in our truth and getting strong together. And the more we do that, more people will just by nature just get joined in, just join in over time. And we help those individuals that we come across who we find those individuals that don't have much capacity for this kind of stuff, right? They're not equipped quite yet to deal with the possibility of nuclear war. And when they go and read that stuff on the media outlets that they tune into, they get all triggered and worried and they think about it for days and days on ends, right? Those kinds of people, there are a lot of those people, and there will be more of those people as the crises ramp up and as the exorcisms go on, right? The collective change goes on. Those people need to be taught somehow how to manage their boundaries, right? When they should quit the internet and go and just smell a rose. The simplest of things that will get them back to being in touch with the most basic level of being. And I use that word very deliberately because we're human beings and it's from the being that we get all the peace because being is just emptiness, it's just awareness. It's being. It's just being. You're just being. It's so simple. There's no thinking. There's no feeling. You're just being, and everything is like you're a you're a boy or girl. It's just like wow, 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 wow. Nothing has to mean anything for being. It's just wonderful what it is. That's what we've lost touch with, basically, and what all the spiritual religions and all of that are trying to bring us back to. The human side is the stuff we've like gotten lost in. So it's time to go backwards and forwards again between the two and bring the being into the human again. This is the whole thing that's going on. They need to be taught, those people need to be taught about their capacity for being in the human. And when they need to quit looking at the human world, stop thinking about it, stop talking about it, stop arguing about the politics in it, stop worrying about all the problems in the human world, and find their most simple, most basic level of contact with being. Go smell a rose if you're a gardener. Go look in the eyes of a baby. Just being is the solution to a lot of that. It distresses them. So yeah, that's why you get a lot of people saying, I'm turning off they recognize their boundaries, right? I'm turning off my social media access for a while, won't be around for a while. They recognize that that has having a toll on them. And that's what we can do for those people until it's help them to find those boundaries and help them resource them so that they can know how to deal with the human apocalypse while it's happening without such a deep level of contact with the realm of being that brings all the peace and all of the wisdom and guidance that it does.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of that. I'm always reporting from the inside because I've been thinking lately that one of the qualities that I have is that I move really, really slowly through these things. And I think that the reason for that is because I get this deep perspective of what it's like to go on that journey, what it was like when I did not have the capacity to understand that death is safe and that beingness is the safe place, and didn't even have the capacity to turn off the news or to I had no framework, no help, no resources, no understanding of that. And so I'm always like part of my role is to report from the inside of what that's like. Because for me, it's still such a spectrum. And for so many people, I would read Eckhart Tolle or I would hear, people talk about things like this beingness and this being connected. And I would know deeply, and I think it maybe was Eckhart Tolle who came up with this, that like pointing at the moon is not the moon,
Yeah.
that I could hear these things and I could hear the understanding of them, but I couldn't get it because it wasn't in my body and bones yet. Like I hadn't gone on that journey yet. And so I'm feeling total connection to people who have not gone on basically a death and rebirth journey of some kind. Like all those things that you were talking about, going through a transformation of some kind, all of that I call death practice. And that it's practice, like you said, to learn that it's actually safe, to learn that things need to come apart in order to come together in a new way. And every single time for me, even though these cycles are much shorter than they used to be, it always feels like death practice. It always feels like stepping. You and I were talking about this before, like standing at the edge and being like, am I going to step off this edge or not? And trusting that I can step off the edge into the unknown, and trusting that there's this very natural process of shedding and death and letting go, and then birth happening right at the moment of death and surrender and letting go, and that there's this birth that accompanies it. Yeah.
Life, death, birth, death. It's one thing. And so it makes sense that they would occur in the same space.
Mm-hmm. Right. And trusting that, I think that very intrinsically in our culture, and as you said, we've kind of lost this sense of beingness, or I would say, and totally I agree with that. And you and I have also talked about many times, like we've lost the trust in death and
Yeah.
the acceptance of death. And so it feels like the thing to push away at all costs.
Yeah.
And having the ability and having this internal capacity that grows over time to approach it and be able to hold it and process it and be with it, just to be with it is, and I think this is true, that it happens on its own time. It's a process that is unfolding, and there's this continual invitation into it, into the trust of death, and into the trust that death is not the end. Like that's really what death practice is whether it's like the timeline of a relationship, or the death of a worldview, or of an idea about yourself, or parts of the self have to die so that the new thing can come in. Whatever that is, like deeply trusting that experience of death, because we have pushed it away so far culturally, like collectively, because we've said, no, it's not okay. Like we don't even really know how to approach it. And I also deeply trust that it's a naturally unfolding thing for people. So when, like recently, one of the things that's been up for me is I've been having apocalypse dreams again. And I used to call them Armageddon dreams. I still have those sometimes. Armageddon dreams to me are like the end of the world. Yeah, destruction. And there's a mushroom cloud, or there's a tidal wave, something like that. It's the end of the world, it's destruction. And these are apocalypse dreams that have been coming up lately. I have crossed these thresholds I've done death practice so many times, and they're still I do ruminate on them for days, and I definitely still go into fear, and I start to feel overwhelmed, and what can it all mean? And I want to report from that place as well, of not not being stabilized in a place that it's like, this is all, even in its not okayness, this is all okay. Like I have access to that a lot, but not all the time. And I can feel the collective of so many people who have gone through these journeys, who have gone through the process of awakening, and are still, riding the waves of what's happening right now, even with all the skills and tools of having gone through this process, is like no fucking joke. I think that one of the things that's really helping me is actually that some of these dreams that I've been having have come true. It's weird that that would be helpful, but it has been very helpful because I've had these dreams my whole life. And seeing a few of them come true, or having a bit of precognition, which has been happening a lot lately, is helping me to trust myself, and also helping me to trust. This is what I was talking about, timelines, that perceiving like this reality sort of moving through me or passing through my field of awareness doesn't mean it's this stuck, static, immovable thing that is that is like truth with a capital T. It's just like I'm perceiving these things passing through. And it's a weird, difficult place to be, but I'm starting to trust that it's a both and. I'm starting to trust that what does come that feels like death and destruction, which I think that there will be some of that comes, is part of this, like you said, this like dissolution process that needs to happen. This deconstruction needs to happen for these systems that, like exactly as you said, that are not serving us anyway, and that we cling to, which makes sense, right? But that, trusting that there's a deconstruction process for a reason, trusting that death is actually safe, which is the ground that makes the whole thing okay. So that on one side, and on the other side, uncoupling this whole process from the terror of the end of the world, that actually that's not what's happening. Like really deeply trusting that this is not an ending, that this collective death and rebirth is as safe as personal death and rebirth, and is the same sort of death practice. It's just happening on a collective level. The other thing that I wanted to talk about that I really agree with is that there's a collective of us who probably are everybody listening, right? That I feel one of the roles for me and for others is exactly as you said, kind of acting as this stabilizing force, holding the knowledge that this is a death and rebirth process, and that it actually is okay, and that it is bringing us towards more wholeness and more, we're evolving towards something better. It's not crumbling into something horrible that there is love and a move towards integrity and wholeness in all of existence. And that, trusting that, and that those of us who do have the capacity for that are holding that field of certainty
Mm.
and awareness, and it creates a stabilizing force for the rest of this process to happen. And if there wasn't that, if there wasn't this group of people who have gone through their own transformations, this death and rebirth, that this wouldn't, number one, it wouldn't be happening because there wouldn't be something to hold it. And number two, it would be far more chaotic. It would be far worse than we can imagine now. And so, as you said, it's like those of us who can hold it, it like shit just got real, even though shit got real 10 years ago and 5 years ago and whatever. But like we're at a threshold where it's like, okay, now it's really time.
We're talking like a huge intersection point here between three massive uh, topics. That's death, right? Death and the mysteries of death, time and the mysteries of time, and eternity is kind of the same thing, really. Time is an eternity, but that is a separate big thing to talk about. And we're really at the intersection here, talking about all of these things. Once you understand that there's a singular awareness, a unity of awareness, and that it is in everything, then you understand that that oneness to everything means that there is an eternity to time, that you're only experiencing it piece at a time, but the presence or the awareness that's within everything is like an infinite awareness and an eternal awareness that's kind of timeless and existing outside of it and is sort of perceiving time, but is not really affected by it. And every incarnation that you have is one that ends in immortal death of some kind, the destruction of form, so that you come back again and again. And there is a perception of time passing while you're going through that part of your journey in existence. And so while we are here, there is a perception of time passing, all right? And it ends when you die. And by the way, I like to think of death like that people are afraid of death. I like to describe it like this, okay? Don't take this too literally, but this is basically how I would describe death looking, right? She's not like an ugly old hag or like a grim reaper or anything like that. She's actually a really, really beautiful, sweet, young looking woman. She might have like white wings, but she's like wearing a t-shirt and it says, "Guess what? You survived."
Yeah.
And that means that you survived it all. You survived everything that happened to you and everything that could have happened to you and everything that might have happened to you. You survived. And that's the motto of death. You survive, you survive, you survive, you survive. Right? She's kind of a Gloria Gaynor fan, I think. You survive it all, babies. You survive it all. And you grow and you grow and you grow and you grow because you just can't help surviving. You can't do anything but survive. You're an eternal consciousness with a timeless essence. So, in the midst of that realization, things like death and life lose the power they had over you before to make you afraid of like losing your life or meeting with death or the death of your loved ones, right? But still, there's a sting in death. It never loses, right? I'm gonna just cry my eyes out when my puppy dog dies. When it's her time to go, I'm gonna rage against it. I'm gonna be really upset, and I'm gonna say it's so unfair, and I'm gonna feel all of those things deep down, knowing that it's all okay. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna let that happen. I'm gonna let that be. I'm gonna let that process like dry me out, like wring me out of all of that, okay? And at the end of it, I'll just be left with the awareness that I've always had that she's not gone. I'll get beyond all of that grief and I'll still be left with the awareness, oh, she's still here, she's still with me. Okay. So there are people that had this, and it's such a gift for them in this world. It really is. It's not like to everybody else who's listening that might be listening that's thinking that can't be true. Like, how do they know that? How do they know that that death isn't the end? Trust me, we know. We know. We just know. We can't prove it to you, but we have proved it. It has been proved to ourselves. This is the case. This is what it is. This is what life is. It's an unending thing. All right. So we're talking about that because once you are okay with death, once you find your moment of comfort with death and you say, oh, look, that's the t-shirt she's wearing. I'm going to survive it all. You're emboldened. Your spirit is incredibly empowered and you're emboldened to deal with whatever you need to deal with. And that includes the things that are happening in the world as well as the things within you. All right. And that is the strength that these people have ultimately. They call it strength of the spirit or, the Holy Spirit, whatever. It's real. It actually exists. It's a spirit that comes to you when you know, fundamentally know, there's no end to your life, and you don't have to be afraid anymore of that. But you are still a human being. And you will still feel fear because human beings feel fear. It's what, we can't be fearless. We're not Batman, right? It's like, right? We can't do that. That's a fantasy. We feel fear. We feel fear all the time for people we love, things going on in the world, right? It's how we process it that changes, right? And so timelines, talking about timelines, once you understand that there is no time, just eternity. You have to start looking at what is time? What does that mean? And that again is taking you to what you will learn after you die, because one of the very first things you'll learn after you die is that you're timeless, and so is everything else, and there's an eternity, and all of this is what I've said. So this mystery of time and this mystery of death are not just intimately related, they're almost bonded together, at least for human beings at this point. And once you get beyond one, death, you go beyond the other, time, and you understand all kinds of other things as a result of that, right? That are totally separate from what you learn about death and what comes after. It's all this stuff that you learn about time and your consciousness and your spirit and your being and all of this. So timelines then become something that you can take on board, right? I feel like before you got to that point where you've had your death process, and it's all death process, like you said, like everything that happens in your life in this incarnation is rooted in another life and a life before that and a life before that and the consequences of things and the choices you made. So it's all death process because you're going to die this time and then that's going to determine what your next incarnation will be necessary for, right? What will be necessary for it. Okay, so it's all that death process. Really, what we're talking about here is the fact that there isn't a time as we understand it in incarnation, but only a time as we understand it outside of incarnation. But that we've still got to deal with time in sequence, day by day by day, while we're in incarnation. We've still got to deal with that. We can't ignore that. It's impossible. And the truth about time, really, and where these timelines can be explained, at least as far as I can do it, is that there is only an eternal now, and it's infinitely tiny. Just as there's an infinite amount of space out there, there's also an infinitely finite amount of space down there, right? And so when you cut the moment down and you cut the infinite moment down into infinitely smaller and smaller parts, you never stop cutting it down into infinitely smaller and smaller parts. You find it ceases to exist. Ultimately, it cannot be pinpointed. It has no substance. It's continuously moving and changing. It becomes an eternal now, only an eternal now. That's when it matches. Then you see that it actually matches eternity. It's actually the same thing, but it's happening so fast, right? That in between It's happening so fast. This is the most mind-blowing thing about it, right? Like the flow of time is happening so quickly that our brain and the awareness that it is using our brain is not able to perceive it changing. It's being reconstructed, rebuilt, that entire universe being reconstructed, rebuilt, reconstructed, rebuilt in between each infinitely finite moment, if you can wrap your head around that, in between and one infinitely finite moment, infinitely small moment, infinitely small, literally, in between that and another infinitely small moment, that's when it happens, right? And ultimately, what causes it to structure itself for the wave of everything, all the possibilities that could happen to collapse into what does happen is awareness, is consciousness, is not just human awareness, but also plant, animal, everything, all awareness on the earth is partaking in this journey. So I just wanted to point that out, by the way, on their behalf, that like I'm cheering all the time for all of the humans that are doing this awakening work like you. And I'm also wanting to say, by the way, don't forget the trees and every little blade of grass and every little bug and every little creature and critter in the forest are all doing everything they can at this point in the same direction to lead to this awakening, to lead to this. They're all doing it by just being themselves and to survive in all of that, but they're still being themselves as they go into survival mode.
Yeah. And I can feel talking about the there being a collective of us who are holding steadiness through this transition.
Yeah.
That felt like a deeper level of beings and beingness holding steadiness through the transition, which is her and the planet and all of these creatures and all of that.
Some of it is inevitable. You will die. We will all die. Nothing you can do to stop it. It's on your timeline. It's on everything's timeline. You can shape it. You can move it, maybe. It doesn't really change the fact that you can't alter it. You can't negate it. You can't stop it. Everything physical has a temporal existence and it will finish. It will be destroyed or that form will be broken down, but it will not lose any of its awareness, any of its consciousness, any of its being. That will just go on to inhabit a new form. So there's an inevitability to timelines. Well, that's one of them, right? I've just named it. The question is, what is really inevitable for the collective? What is inevitable for the human collective at this point? What is something that we must go through, that is necessary for us to go through, and what is not? And as these timelines play out and these big apocalyptic like doom clouds that we've been building for millennia start to appear, these demons that we've created start to appear and be exercised. Yeah, we don't know exactly which of those, how much of that is going to be necessary. We as, I'm talking about you and I, as people who experience these timelines and understand them, we have our own awareness of them moving through. We don't know that. We're not godlike enough to know what humans as a collective need. Fortunately, we don't need to be. There's other beings that manage that and they help us, right? They teach us and they guide us. But we as individual human beings can't be expected to know this. All we can do is be aware of what the timelines are that are moving through us as individuals for the collective. So we see now, you and I, there is this apocalyptic timeline. It is moving through us. And I think everybody, and we've seen it for a long time, but now I think everybody is getting to the point in the world where it's becoming geopolitical and you can't ignore it anymore, right? And of course, I think it will become furthermore unavoidable. That's my view. I feel that this timeline is inevitable, part of an inevitable one, not a non-inevitable one, like not an avoidable one. And the reason why I say that is because it's the one that brings meaning to our journey as a collective species is to look at what we've done and where we brought ourselves, and to see some of that apocalypse, some of that destruction, some of that death. The consequences of those choices need to be made clear to us, because that's what will bring meaning to us deciding not to do certain things anymore, be a certain way anymore,
I'd
right?
love to pause there for a second because there's so much the mini kind of existential crisis that I've been going through is, and I can feel this in a collective of experiencers as well. From the time I was 4 years old, the beings took me and showed me Armageddon. They showed me the apocalypse. They showed me these things and instilled in me, like, you must do something about this. And it was
Mm-hmm.
traumatic, and it was very difficult. And it happened over and over throughout my life. And then at some point, I said, I can't live like this is coming next week. Like, I cannot take this on as a reality. It's not true. It's not real. I'm rejecting it. I have to go on with a different kind of my life. I think that that was part of me working through my own consent and agency process and sort of decoupling, attaching my own higher self to these beings in some ways, like, oh, whatever comes through in this liminal space or in the out of body space or in a vision is, capital T truth, and that I'm sort of a victim of these things coming through. I think it was a very important part of my journey to say stop. And I'm not playing this. I'm not doing this anymore. That's been a lot of my work. I've talked a lot about that on the podcast, about like consent and agency and all of that. That's been a huge part of it. What's been happening lately, and this is so vulnerable for me to talk about. Like a week ago, I couldn't talk about it. Like, I literally couldn't. My throat closed when I tried to talk about it. But what feels very true to me is accepting that the timeline that is here and that I actually do think is necessary is the timeline that includes some kind of apocalypse. And it is an inevitable timeline. And the deep acceptance of that as not a catastrophe has been really challenging. And it's been really good for me to do that, but hard. There's still this deep intrinsic thing that I think has to do with the split that happened, around 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago with patriarchy, right? With animal husbandry and with all of these things where all of the, there was a split between the mind and body and the masculine and feminine and all of these, and all of this was kind of shoved, and death, right? Like death, anything quote unquote dark was put into the underworld and we don't look at it. And now there's this reunification happening. And I'm seeing, I constantly am seeing all of these ways that it's so intrinsic and like deep, deep, deep within that anything quote unquote negative is not okay. Even still, after all this time and all this work, like death is not okay. That the collapse or the letting go of these systems is not okay. And even while looking at the horrors of war going on in the world, it's not like it's okay now, in many ways. Like in some ways it is okay. In other ways, it's deeply not okay. There is suffering right now. And that I think that the thing that I've really been wrestling with is the realization that the path of least amount of suffering is going through this collective death and rebirth. That that's the path that brings the most love and care and the least amount of suffering. And so as I'm trying to, like, I've been doing a lot of like world creation lately, where I place my attention and the quality of my attention is reflected back to me, and not, like you said, not ego. I because of many reasons, I use that word less because it has a lot of connotations. People have been told to like kill the ego and stuff like that. And you and I both know it's not what it's about. Like, I would say my relative self, like relative Robin, is not like relative Robin's awareness and attention does have an effect on reality in relative Robin's reality. And also there's, bigger self, there's greater self or ultimate self or something. And where I place that attention, or where I'm noticing the mirror reflection happening with that level of self, coming to terms with the fact that I am putting it on the apocalypse. I do think that, and I can't, like, I don't know if I'm going to cut this out of the episode, to be honest. Like, that feels so edgy to say because I don't want destruction. I don't want death. I don't want more suffering. What I've been feeling more and more is like, this is the timeline that I'm on. The timeline that I'm on includes the apocalypse. And as I accept that, I fight against it less. As I accept that, I spend more time helping myself be more resourced and resilient. As I accept that, I am less afraid of death and destruction. And as I accept that, I can have more capacity to help with whatever arises in front of me. And it's a very weird paradox. And I can feel that it's this central thing that me and many people are swirling around like right now. It feels sort of liberating to say to say all of that because I also know you deeply get it.
Good to hear you say that. I don't think that there is a definitive answer to this conundrum, to this dilemma, that anyone can give to everybody else, right? I think that there is, uh, I think maybe what's helpful that I can put on the table, right, rather than other than my own opinion and my own view, is some of my understanding of the mysteries of time again, because that's essentially what we are talking about here. What is happening right now is that the apocalypse is playing out. I don't think that there is any kind of disagreement that we're heading in that sort of general direction, and that there are many, many reasons why we are looking at a situation where we're under threat, right? Our society, our culture, our civilization is under threat by something like a big collapse of some kind, right? Could come from space, could come from the planet itself. Who knows where it comes from? But everybody can see that, all right? I feel that that's got to be accepted rather than denied, first of all. There's a level of denial here that is taking place there in some strata of our collective where people don't even want to admit that we're facing apocalyptic potential. Don't even want to think about it. Okay, haven't got that either the capacity or they don't have anything to contribute. They feel they don't have anything to contribute to that, anything to do about it. Okay, all right. There's that I see there. But there's another part of it, which is that these timelines, as they're coming through us, is apocalyptic potential that's coming through us. It is real and it's playing itself out. But you and I, we can feel that, and we're having our guidance tell us that this is where we're going. But we don't know the details and the specifics of any of that. And it's very flexible. It's ultimately very flexible because it manifests only through the now moment. So anything that we're seeing happening in the future ain't happened yet for us. It's just a possibility or a potential. It might be a very strong one, almost a prophetic one, but it's still the details of it, the granular details of it won't ever be calculated until that wave actually collapses and whatever it is comes into manifestation, right? So these waves are moving through us that have the people that have the awareness to sense them and to be aware of them. And this is a big one that's happening right now. And then there's, like I said, a lot of people that are in total denial of that and don't want to look at that. And okay, fine. They need to do what they need to do to take care of themselves. But I would say that's always going to be unhealthy. Denial is always unhealthy for you. You've got to face it in the end in some way. It will come up and bite you on the ass, right? It will get you, it will find its way into your life if you pretend that it doesn't exist because it is in your life. That's my view of that, right? So the sooner that those people can get over that and start participating in some way and seeing some way in which they can contribute to making a difference in that area, the better, right? But then you've got all this other group of people that are really very strong at this point that only want to focus on the light, don't want to look at the darkness. And I've been one of those people in my life, and I am not one of those people now anymore. I've been one of those people that have been focused in many lifetimes as well, only on talking to people about the positive and the light and the joy of life and the wonder and the magic of life. And this is not who I am now. This is not what I do now. Now I look at the dark and the light. That's actually the Hermetic way, is to begin by looking at your darkness and your light, and to make this thorough inventory of your soul in both the good and the bad qualities. That's just how I've done it in this world, in this lifetime. And so for me, the light and the dark are intrinsically valuable and equally important, and I couldn't perceive my own path even existing without the dark that I've dealt with, without the pain that I've been through, without the suffering and the loss, and not just my own, but the way I've involved myself in that in the world as well. And so for me, that is fundamentally not where I can be, right? In all that, let's just only think of the light, let's only think of the positive, because if we think of the positive, then we'll manifest the positive and law of attraction and all of this. Okay. Good luck to you. But I think that that's also in danger of denying the darkness fundamentally. I think that strategy is fundamentally vulnerable to ignoring the darkness and being in denial of the darkness. And fundamentally, to me, that is a dangerous situation that leads to more likely the actual apocalypse, right? Like the actual Armageddon apocalypse, right? Because denial is how we get here anyway, right? We're in denial of our spiritual nature and our spiritual being, and denial is it's been a big companion with us on this whole diversion.
Mm-hmm.
It still is. And so if you want to truck with denial, you want to play a game with denial. I'm not saying that you are in denial. If you're one of these light warriors, by the way, if you're one of these positive thinkers, I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying you need to be aware that you're vulnerable to being in denial of not looking at darkness, not looking at the darker side of life, and not being able to integrate it, and then having it creep up on you when you least expect it and you're not prepared.
This is why we are where we are now,
Yeah.
is the denial of the dark. I mean, that's why we find ourselves where we are. Like that
Yeah.
is what happens when you deny the dark.
I would say not just like a constant companion on our journey through darkness, denial, and our journey deeper and deeper and deeper into ignorance, denial, 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 always been with us, and ultimately probably is in some way rooted in some deep, deep, deep collective denial connected to murder, like when people first go to war and then there's a killing and an awareness that we can kill, and then there's like just a big journey there going on with denial and repressing that. It's like that kind of thing leads to justification of why it was necessary to do that, and denial is right there straight away, right? So all of human progress, denial has been there, and it's been part of the journey we've made into darkness. That being ignorance of the spirit, ignorance of our connection to everything. It's enabled us to use everything for our own advantage. It's enabled us to be in denial of that and the consequences of that for so long. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So that's why I say I'm not criticizing those people that have this path. They have that path to be only positive. That is their path. I would never criticize any religion at this point either, because I see that they all have their own path to the unity, to the truth for various people. There are good people on every path. But what I'm saying is, if you're not going to look at the darkness, if your path involves some kind of like focusing only on the light and on the positive, you're in danger of being in denial of it, and its power could creep up on you. And that's just my view, right? So I don't have any answers for anyone. All I have is my perspective and what works for me and what I need to do right now. And you have the same. And we are the same in that, right? We right now we need to hold on to the awareness that we're dealing with the apocalyptic timeline. To deny it, to repress it, is also to actually, I think, empower it, to push it away rather than deal with it.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with it, processing it now and now and now while we're talking about it and thinking about it. And when we're meditating with it and working with it in our own ways, apart from these conversations, now, all the time, eternally, we're doing that. It doesn't mean that we believe that's what's going to happen. We don't know that, ultimately, I would say. But what we do know is that that's what's going to happen now, unless we are doing what we're doing. And maybe, yes, I agree with you as well. I'm in agreement with you here. A certain degree seems to me, from my perspective, certain degree of death and destruction is going to be necessary. And I'm not talking only about humans here. I'm talking about species. I'm talking about animals. And I'm talking about aspects of nature as well. Look like they will not make it through this transition. And that becomes part of the meaning human beings will carry forward, that they are responsible for that. They carry some responsibility for that, right? And also for the human beings that will be lost. All of that gives meaning to all of it. Aside from that, I feel like some death and some destruction or loss of life is going to be necessary. Not, I don't say how much. I would never dare predict that. But there is some to be, it seems that necessary. There's some degree of that is in front of us, because collective ego, the egoistic structures of the collective human awareness that we've created, they are, I'm going to name them now. I said I wouldn't earlier, but I would say they're corporations, governments, political movements, some religions. Okay, maybe the religions can survive. I don't know, but there are certain things, certain structures that we've created that are innately corrupted, and not only corrupted, but unable to transition. They're not fit to transition into what would be the best future for humankind and the earth. They're not fit to be there with us. They can't, right? And the dismantling of some of those systems ultimately inevitably leads to the loss of some life somewhere down the line. How much trust will there be in the process? And if there isn't enough trust in the process, it will result in more denial and repression and more death. That's my view.
Okay. I mean, there's two things coming up. One is kind of brief, which is we already are in this process as well. Like we already have lost species based on our denial. And
Yeah.
there's a long history on this planet of species rising and falling and coming and going. Like that's part of the long history of this planet that happened before humans. And then
Right.
there's a bunch of stuff that human denial and being out of alignment with our species relationship to the mother, with our mother earth, has, it's what I call dumb suffering. It's needless. It's actually, we don't, we could choose not to do it. We could choose not to do
Yeah.
those things once we have enough awareness, which is what's coming.
Yeah.
We are already in it. What we're already seeing. That somehow gives me some peace with it a little bit, because it helps me feel less like, oh, there's some looming horror in the future, and there might be, and we're living it. It seems like there's a process of just
Yeah. Right.
acceptance of and awareness of that, and not being in denial with what's already happening and that's
Right.
already not working. The other thing, how deeply can we trust the process, and how much space do I have and ability do I have to be not in resistance to it? To
Mhm.
instead of resisting, pushing back, be in a space of acceptance and non resistance to this thing that is unfolding. And as you say, we don't know where it's going. We can't see exactly what's happening, but it is the unfolding is happening through me, and not being in denial of the fact that the unfolding is happening through me, that I'm having these experiences, that I'm seeing it in front of me, not denying that. It reminds me of something that the beings told me a long time ago when I was
The four who are one.
the four who are one, the four who are one, when I was in sort of at the beginning. I had stepped off the cliff, right? Like I had started the hero's journey or the fool's step, and I had stopped out of fear, right? Like it was too much, which makes sense. Like I had it was bad. They said, how uncomfortable does it have to get? How uncomfortable does it have to get? And the discomfort comes with resistance, denial, pushing away, not turning towards, not letting the wheel turn, putting on all the brakes, stopping the process, and resisting, pushing away, being afraid of which makes total sense. Like I say again and again, like it makes sense to be afraid of this. It makes sense to have fear come up. It makes sense to sense the impending death that's coming, of whatever. At that time it was like I was approaching the darkest night that I had ever been on. For people who've read the book, it was when I was in New Mexico and in the haunted house and in the terrible relationship, and that culminated in, near death by gun violence. And like, it was very terrifying. And I could sense that sort of dark night approaching. I could sense that I was going to go through this incredibly powerful, deep transformation. And I had the brakes on, and it was so uncomfortable. I couldn't go back. You can't go back.
Mm.
And I refused to go forward. Like I just knew on some level what was coming, and I was resisting it with every ounce of my being. And they said, you can hang out here
Mm-hmm.
and be in the discomfort of not moving. And how uncomfortable do you want it to be? It's totally up to you. They were showing me that, like, the only way out is through, and that just accepting it was going to unlock all of these things that I was very locked in. That's a pattern for me still. Like I get to these moments where it's like, oh my God, the wheel is turning, it's coming, it's happening again. This cycle is happening again, a death and a birth. They're much faster these days. But I sort of always get to like the 2 o'clock point on the wheel just before it tips and turns.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
can feel that momentum, and I put on the brakes and I
Uh,
cling.
uh-huh.
And actually the clinging is more painful
Mm.
than going through the process. And that's deeply what it reminds me of. Like, how much do I trust
Yeah.
life? How much
Yeah.
do we trust this unfolding, this story that we've been telling ourselves? Like, this is the human story of, you go on a journey, you set out, you meet obstacles, you gather allies, you go into the darkness, you find the light in the darkness. It's integrated. There's gold, there's treasure, there's an elixir. You bring it back, you share it with the world. We do it over and over, and we keep
Yeah.
telling this story. It's in every movie, it's in every
Yeah.
the oldest stories that we have is that story. It's the
Yeah.
tarot. It's it's this. We do it over and over again. And how
Story of,
deeply do I trust that story?
it is the story of everything.
It
It's the
is.
story of everything. Yeah. It's the story, the archetypal story. Yeah.
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 And it's supposed to be, it's like, it is scary.
Mhm.
It is. I'm always you, and I know you're this way too. It is the both and. It is the light and the dark. It is the fear and the courage. When you keep saying that this needs to happen because that's where the meaning will come from. We will have the meaning of this journey because we went on this journey. It will mean something to us because we lost something. And
Right.
that's horrible. And it's true. I have meaning for these times in my life of death and rebirth because there was a fucking death.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And trusting that that's not wrong, trusting that that's not out of alignment, or that that's not, trusting that we are here on this planet in this experience to experience this. We are already always whole and in
Mhm.
perfect
Right.
light and
Yeah.
love and peace, and that pervades, that is the everything.
I see. Yeah.
And that we go on this journey, and that's also here even through the pain, even through the suffering. It's also the immanence of what I would call the goddess.
Mhm.
There aren't corners and shadows where she is not.
Right.
She is in
Yeah.
all of this.
She's indwelling in
She's
all of
indwelling,
this.
right?
Yeah. 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 Right. And ultimately, I think what you're talking about here is really important fundamental truth. You're talking about how it's easier than it looks to align with higher truth, with higher energy, with spiritual teachings. All right. Many of the people that come to me and talk to me about their journeys on that, whatever path there is that they're on, they say, but it's so difficult. It's so hard. I've got to practice every day, whatever it is that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I'm always failing and I'm always falling. And I say, yeah, okay. But do you realize that this is not hard? Do you realize that this is actually meant to be easy? Do you realize that this is meant to be just you being naturally what you are and always have been? That there is an eternal spirit, an eternal like being within you that's just trying to radiate, just trying to shine out. And actually, all the hard stuff, all the effort is you blocking it,
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
you blocking out that wisdom, blocking out that guidance, blocking out the flow of inspiration that's flowing to you all the time. And it doesn't care that you are in denial of it. It doesn't care that you don't believe in it. It doesn't care that you turn away from it. It doesn't care that you squander it. It just keeps chugging down the pipes into your life. You're constantly being loved in exactly the way that you need to be loved and looked after and all of that. And your guidance is unfolding perfectly, but you're making an enormous effort. We call it the ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're making an enormous effort to shut it all out. You create a narrative, an imagined story of your life that blocks it all out. You're constantly thinking about what you're going to eat, like what you're going to wear. That's all blocking it out. All this noise basically is just like blocking it out. And it's only when you go quiet and you sit within you and you just deconstruct from all of that, unplug all of that, take all of that away from your awareness that it floods in. It finds you. The moment you stop thinking and you stop feeling and you stop doing and you just sit there and you just be there and close your eyes and you just be there with your awareness and just be there, be present. Peace comes to you. Peace that you've been looking for all freaking day long was always there inside of you. And all you had to do was just stop doing everything else that you were doing, and it would come to you and you would find it. That's who we are. We're beings of pure peace. That's part of who we are, beings of pure peace, and that feeling of love that comes with that peace, of being cared for and nurtured that comes with that peace. That's all real. That's who we are. That's what we are. That's us. That's the true identity of us. And that peace is always there for everybody and everything. All they got to do is go through the door, and that's a choice now for human beings. At one point, it was not a choice. It was a world that we lived in. It was a state of our being. We very early on in our development, like we were at one with everything, like the animals, and that was our state of being. And we've made this journey into not doing that so that we have the power of choosing. Ah, that's really interesting, isn't it? We've been given the power of choosing to to be or to do, and we've been given the ability to do both. To bring the being into the doing eventually, to bring the guidance and the peace that comes, all the information that comes to us when we access that peace, to bring it in through intellectual things like sciences and mathematics and arts and all these relationships, all these things that we do as human beings. We've been given the opportunity to do with the choice of bringing a greater spiritual awareness to it now or not, right? It's an interesting power we've been given to choose for ourselves. that other living creatures that live with us don't have. Trees don't have that. They don't have the power to choose not to be who they are. They just be who they are, and they just be it. And human beings can be in denial of all of that as
Yeah.
much as they like. They can tell themselves all kinds of narratives and stories about who they are and what they are and what it means and all of that. And they're free to do that as long as they want. There's a special gift in that.
That's something that I've come to again and again, that on some level I have the awareness that I already am that. I already am peace. I already am that awareness. And another part of me is like, yeah, but I'm here for the journey. Like I want to see what it's like to choose not that. I want to see what it's, it is the journey. And I think I'm realizing more and more that it's part of my life this time on the planet is like going through the journey of coming to that and remembering that, but not denying the journey along the way. Like, even again, this is where there's no corners that she isn't, even in the not choosing, even in the making it difficult, or even in the
Yeah,
struggle of it, or the intense emotion, or not being able to stop my thoughts, or any of that she's not there. She's there too. And that feels liberating, because there's no wrong answer with that, right? Like that's not a problem either, which kind of feels like a hug, or like a bigger lap, more space in her lap. It's
yeah,
like, and this too, and this too, and I'm this way, and I'm this way, and I'm this way. But that's one of the perspectives to be in, is in that peace and beingness. And another perspective of her is being in the forgetting, or being in the even pain, or being in the even denial. Like even in those places, she's there.
yeah,
That feels closer to love to me. You and I have had so many conversations in just between the two of us that have gone into these depths together and explored so many things, and we know each other in those ways. And now that we're speaking
yeah,
publicly in these conversations, it feels like there's this font of endless like conversation and information and
yeah.
perspectives that wants to come through, and it feels a little bit like a fire hose right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm pleased with that because I had like a few concerns, like we're talking to an audience, but not to one another. This is not a private conversation so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about things, more personal things in those conversations than I would be happy sharing in a public audience. And I'm also very like aware, I'm highly cognizant of the fact that other people have other boundaries. And I have to be careful what I say and what I feel and how I express it and how that might be heard, misunderstood or not misunderstood, all of that. I was afraid that that was going to be a little bit of a like a tight corralling
Mm.
of our like wild sort of rambling fire hose conversations, but it's not at all. So
No, it's not at all. I had a perception as we were talking, because I know you and I are deeply connected, and I don't need to say exactly how, but we have such a deep spiritual
yeah.
unity. There's like a place that we both know very well, that we both come from. And I feel like my work and my perspective is very beautifully balanced by your work and your perspective. It's almost the same. It's like we're being the mouthpiece for one voice. It's just coming through two different
Yes.
mouths, and
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
really fun
It
experience.
is a
Yeah.
beautiful harmony.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful harmony we had and always had.
Hmm. Yeah. From the first instant. And
It's us. It's us. It's our being. This is our being. And
mm,
what when we are both being who we are and we meet, this is what happens.
yeah. It's so good. And I
It's
love you so
lovely.
much.
I love you too, sweetie. I love you too. And everyone else out there too.
Thank you so much to David Coleman. He'll be back. If you would like to join a book club for Starhawk's The Fifth Sacred Thing, and also attend twice monthly community gatherings where we explore these ideas and more, become a patron in the Earth Lovers tier at patreon.com/Robin Lassiter. Also, there are some new projects underway. a second book, a second podcast with a special co-host, and the birth of the Mystery School for the Brokenhearted, all quickening into existence. Don't forget to sign up for Carrie's offering happening on September 7th. And if you'd like to learn more about my work, my cohorts, my groups, or to book a one-on-one session with me, please visit robinlassiter.com.